So today we are here with Jessica Katz and we are talking all things large properties. Jessica, thanks so much for being with us.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm very excited.
Yay! I'm excited to talk with you as well. Before we jump into my questions, why don't we just have you start off and share a little bit about who you are and how you got started in short-term rentals?
Sure, absolutely. So my story is going to take a little bit longer than your usual guests. Is that okay?
Absolutely.
Okay, perfect. So my story really first starts off, my first memory of, wanting to be a doctor at 5 years old. And I had a lot of doctors in my family. It was just something that I was going to do. There was no question. I didn't really think about any other career options. And so that goal kind of dictated, my life, really. In high school, I worked incredibly hard, studied incredibly hard to get into a good college. In college, I studied way too much to get into med school. In med school, just like everyone else, I was studying 10 to 12 hours a day. I graduated in the top 10% of my med school class and got into one of my first choices for OBGYN residency in Chicago. Spent 4 years in Chicago training to become an OBGYN. Very difficult journey to be a resident, working 80 hours, being exhausted all the time, not always getting treated very nicely. But I was happy. I was finally near my goal. I was delivering babies, doing surgery. It was a joy for me. I got married during that time. I had my first child. And then after training, we moved back to our hometown of Cleveland, Ohio, where I started my career as an OBGYN. The first couple years were amazing. I was finally doing what I wanted. I had autonomy. I was doing surgery. I was making a difference in people's lives. I quickly became pretty popular within the hospital system. I had the highest patient satisfaction ratings. I had a second baby, and then things were great until they weren't. I think a lot of people within the medical field, once they get out on their own, realize it's not exactly what they thought it was going to be. But for me, something happened that I had not even anticipated, and that was politics within a hospital system. And basically, what ended up happening 2 years into, my time there was that a colleague accused me of stealing her patients. I didn't even understand what that meant, but I would never, do that on purpose. And, slowly after that, complaints started, coming through. I wasn't confident in the OR. I had called someone in for help, even though everyone, did that. And when men do that, it's seen as, oh, you're a good teammate and, you know your limits and good for you. I do that one time in 2 years and suddenly I'm not confident and that my skills need to be monitored. I was told, oh, you're too meek in the OR. And so then the next time I was in the OR, I tried to speak with more authority. And then I started, getting comments that I was aggressive and the nurses were complaining that I was a bitch basically. And, it just was crazy. I couldn't win. And that all led to a point where a patient was not compliant with my advice. And I, told her to go to the hospital and she didn't. And she ended up having an adverse outcome. She was ultimately fine, thankfully. She took full responsibility for not listening to me. I thought everything was okay. 4 weeks later, I got a message that I had to go to a meeting with the CMO of the hospital system and the chair of my department, where I was told that because of that incident, I was an immediate threat to patient safety and my privileges were being suspended from that hospital. Nothing made sense.
Gosh.
I didn't understand how this was happening. Colleagues were trying to come to my aid, like this is insane. She did nothing wrong. And hospital systems have really all the power and there's supposed to be checks and balances. But when people who don't like you are part of those checks and balances, bad things can happen. And so I didn't have privileges in the hospital. That led to, separating from that hospital system. I couldn't get a job within the city that I moved back to. I was about to have my third child. It was the worst time of my life. I couldn't get a job in the area. For 9 months, I didn't have a job. I remember crying to my husband would I ever be happy again? Would I ever smile again? I didn't know what to do. I finally ended up finding a hospital in a rural area of Ohio that was willing to give me a chance. And so I moved my family, including my poor husband, who, was able to work remote, thankfully, but I moved to a rural city outside of Cincinnati. And so this hospital was lovely. But, I was the only OBGYN there, and it was a different environment than what I was used to. And, I did well there, and I was in, the local newspapers for saving lives, and I was commended by the CMO of the hospital system of what a great job I was doing. But I was scarred from what happened to me. And I thought that if I didn't even do anything to deserve what happened to me the first time, what would happen if I really, had a complication? Because even the best doctor, has complications. Right. And I just lived in constant fear. And so, a year after that, I was able to move back to my hometown. I was going to now drive to a job an hour away doing shift work, instead of, having patient contact every day. But it's what, I was going to do. And so I lived with fear all the time, fear that I could lose my job again. I'd have to move out of my house again, that I wouldn't be able to give my kids the type of life that I envisioned for ourselves. And so that made me want to start something that no one could take away from me, that I could build something that was due to my efforts, and my success was going to be based off of me. And so I was really looking for an opportunity like that. And so one night on call, waiting for a delivery, I was on Instagram and an ad popped up for this course called BNB Formula. And BNB Formula taught people to start an Airbnb business without owning property. And that intrigued me. And I went on the call and I had to make a pretty quick decision if I was going to, join the course or not. And my husband was like really apprehensive. It's a $10,000 course. What are you doing? Like, you'll get used to being a doctor again. What are you doing? And I said, Jordan, I can't spend every day with a pit in my stomach that I'm worried about the unknown. It's not good for me. And so, he agreed to let me take the course. And so, I did, and I decided to go all in. And if I could sit down in a library and study for 10 hours without getting up, then I was going to make this work. And so that really started my journey into, rental arbitrage, and the business, that we've built to today.
Wow. I mean, there is so much to unpack in that story. I have all kinds of...
Sorry, Lucy.
No. And there are so many great nuggets that I want to dive into that, quite honestly, have nothing to do with short-term rentals and everything to do with your mindset and pushing through that fear, because I feel like that's something that is so relevant for so many people. So many women go through similar struggles, obviously not the same exact struggles, but, things go wrong in life. And I think sometimes it's really difficult to have the tools to know how to deal with when bad things happen, right? Whether it's in your job, in your short-term rental business, at home. So I do want to talk through some of that, if you don't mind, because I'd love to get your thoughts on what you feel like worked for you. So all that to say, let's dive into the stress factor. When we encounter stress as humans, it can be extremely detrimental, not only to our physical health, but to our mental health, of course. How did you deal with the stress, and what things did you find most helpful to help you relax and get out of that mode where you feel like you're living with a pit in your stomach all the time?
Yeah. I mean, I wish I had a better answer for when I was going through it. I mean, the 9 months where I didn't have a job, I literally, again, asked my husband if I'd ever be happy again. I mean, I just had this third baby. I thought we'd have to move out of our house because we couldn't afford the mortgage just, on one salary. Everything I sacrificed to get to that position, it all seemed to be taken away. and just the unfairness of it. So, going back, I wish, I could have done those things different, but when you're in it, it's just extremely hard. But for me, what helped me the most was finding something to be able to rely on if the worst case scenario happened again. And that was finding an area that I had no experience in, never thought that, I would be in, but it just gave me the calmness of, okay, if I get fired from this job, I will not lose my house. I will still be able to, be on my way to the financial future that I see for my family. I will be able to pay back those med school loans, just everything. And so I think I'm a planner, which is really hard at the time to where's the plan? It's very unsettling. But just having, a backup plan. And, I think that everybody, no matter if things are great in their job or not, they need a nest egg to rely on, just in case, because you never know. And so then, when I had this business that was starting and I saw that it was successful, I was able to go into work with less of that feeling. I still never recovered completely. I stepped away from full-time medicine in June because the joy was gone for me. I still do shift here and there if they need, someone, but it's not, a full-time job anymore. It's something that I do because I want to, not because I have to. And that has completely changed, the stress in my heart and my stomach.
Yeah, absolutely. I talk about fear and stress a lot in my book that's coming out, which is called Live Big. It releases in March, but not only do I talk about fear and stress, but I walk through fear and stress busters, how to break through those things, because I think it is so incredibly important for us to have tools in our toolbox that we can pull out again in unexpected situations. But one of the things that I heard you say is you're a planner and you created a backup plan. I will share with you, I also believe that you had intention. You had intention behind, okay, stuff is being thrown at me that I didn't expect, I didn't want, I didn't bring on, but by golly, I'm not going to let it get the best of me. Right. And so when we live with awareness and intention, I call it AI, right? But if not the AI all of us think about, but awareness and intention behind changing your future. We can do anything as women, as long as we believe in ourselves and we're intentional about how we focus our time, energy, and efforts. So I just want to say kudos to you for your resilience and for breaking free of that situation, and creating a new life for yourself.
Thank you. Everyone wants to go back to certain times in their life, but if I could go back, I would definitely, in those 9 months where I thought my life was over, I was never gonna, do what I wanted to do with my life. I wish that I could have at that point looked at alternatives, right? Because you think your career, you only can do this, or you only, you don't think about other options. And so I wish I thought about those other options a year and a half before I did. And so I guess I would go back to myself and if, and say to people, if you feel stuck and you feel like there's, no way out. I mean, there are so many things that people can do, and people, change what they're doing all the time. And, when I started doing this full time, people all the time, including my family members, said, but you sacrifice so much to be a doctor. You're just going to give that up? It doesn't seem worth it. And I'm like, yes, it does to me. Why be miserable for another 25 or 30 years when I don't have to be? That would be, the tragedy for me.
Yeah. On the opening page of my book, I wrote, for mom who taught me that life is too short not to enjoy it. Right. Yeah. So again, being intentional about choosing joy even though we have to do hard things, perhaps to get back to that joyful state. But if you're doing something in your day to day that doesn't feed your soul, doesn't light you up, I believe that life is too short to live it miserably, right? We can have happiness and we can have a thriving business. And so again, I just want to applaud you for kind of breaking free of those things that were holding you back and intentionally choosing a different path. There aren't many people that do that, right? There are lots of people who live in the misery, right? And you chose differently. So kudos.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
I want to ask you about your rental arbitrage journey. Talk to us a little bit about how you got your first arbitrage property and where it was located.
Sure. So, today we have 24 arbitrage units. We have 2 of our own properties on Airbnb and now recently signed 2 co-hosting deals. And so this is now, but back, 2 years ago, I was brand new at this and I needed it to work. And I took the course in record time and set out doing what I was taught. And I got 77 no's before my first yes. And so I live in a suburb of Cleveland, Ohio called Solon. And so I really was focusing on local homes, in the Cleveland area. And so I was on Zillow, Facebook Marketplace, and on Zillow, I noticed a 4-bedroom property for rent, and it kind of looked like it was on Airbnb. It had the towels folded on the end of the bed, like it just, it kind of looked like it had been on Airbnb, and I thought that was interesting. So why are they trying to rent it long term if it wasn't successful? And so I reached out to the owner and kind of, talked to him and yeah, it was on Airbnb. He was too busy in his day-to-day to run it. So he had a property management team running it. And he just wanted, and the numbers were okay for him, but he just wanted to know that every month he was getting the same amount. He didn't want to get almost nothing in the slow winter months. And so he just wanted something that was going to be every month. He knew what he was getting. And so, I did my own research and, I thought that I could add some color and kind of optimize the listing a little bit. And without having to pay 20% to a property management company, then I would hit, my target, which was at first $1,000 per property per month was what I wanted to, take home. And so Joe was all for letting me do it, but he wanted me to take another unit. So his unit was actually 2 duplexes in one house. And so if I was going to take one side, he wanted me to take both. And that was kind of nerve-wracking. So I was like, oh my gosh, $5,000 a month for, rent for both of them. I don't know,
Right.
but, ran the numbers and decided to, take the plunge. And so what was really good about that listing was that I didn't have to pay for mattresses. I didn't have to pay for a lot of the furniture that I would have to do for a brand new empty unit. And so I added accent wallpaper in the bedrooms, painted some walls, added some more kitchen amenities, changed all of the linens to white. So I did, spend some money, but probably half of what I would, if it was, brand new.
Sure.
And so that helped a lot. And so started in January, Cleveland in January, a brand new listing. Not great. Not great. I hired a cleaning team and handyman that, they ended up doing drugs in the house and they were just an awful mess. And just, learning, that first month or 2, we were letting local people, rent it for one night. Huge mistake, right? So you kind of learn. And so, got another cleaning team. I found another handyman team and just kind of learned as we went. And by summer, we were, hitting in the profitable, margin. And so in that time, we had, 2 more listings that we found in an area. Something that really helped was targeting owners who were looking for college students to lease out their homes for, for long, for the college. towns. And so I thought, if this person was willing to have a bunch of, college students potentially rent and like ruin their property, then why would he say no to me when I, have to keep it in good condition at all times? Mm-hmm. So it seemed like, worth talking to, those owners. And so talked to an owner named Derek, and he was an investor from San Francisco trying to do long-term leases with college students. Let me take half of his duplex, which was 5 bedrooms. College students were renting out the other half already. And that unit did so well that when that lease was up on the other side, we took over. So in Cleveland, now we have 4 units, but 2 houses. And what we found really profitable and beneficial for us was having 3 listings for every duplex, each side individually, but then a listing where both sides are together. Because when you're able to advertise an 8 or 9 bedroom house, that is not something that a lot of people can offer. And so we're able to get a lot of bookings that way, at great prices for being able to offer.
That's so interesting about the college students, and what a great nugget of information, because you're absolutely right. If a landlord is willing to rent to college students, why on earth would he turn you down if you're going to take great care of his property, right?
Exactly. That was my thought.
So can you dive into when you were making those phone calls? What types of things were you saying to these folks? And how did your process go where, you had the initial conversation to you landed a yes? Can you walk us through the details behind that?
Sure. And this is just kind of going off a script that I was taught in the course. I mean, I think there's a lot of people that teach this out there, and it's kind of the same. So this is nothing that I, thought of, but, some people say that you need a phone call, you need to, walk through the property in person. I did that at first, and the owners were really mad at me for wasting their time. After they weren't really into letting me do it. And so then I started really just texting or messaging my initial pitch, right? Mm-hmm. And that was just like, hi, my name is Jessica Katz. I own a company, JK2 Properties, and we specialize in short-term housing solutions. We are a corporate leasing, company, but we also, really target people that are professionals in town that just need a nice place to stay. And if that sounds interesting to you, I'd love, to talk more about it. And then I would bullet point like why working with us was great, and just hitting those same points that I'm sure everyone in arbitrage uses, that we are looking to sign multi-year leases. So this is not, this is a benefit for you. You're not going to have to find a new tenant every year. You have me for as long as you'll have me. Second is that, I have the money to pay rent. This is, what I'm doing, as part of what I do, but I also have, we have W-2 salaries coming in, so you'll never have to worry about rent being late. We take care of all maintenance, below $200 a month, so we're not bothering you, for little things. And your property is going to be given back better than how we got it, because in order for our business to be successful, we need to keep it in perfect condition at all times. And so that's what, you will get when we, give it back to you as a perfect, condition property for you.
Yeah, that's awesome. And so after sending that initial message, was it an instant yes? Did you have to have multiple conversations with these landlords? What did that time frame look like?
Yeah, the Cleveland ones. I mean, so at first, actually, I was doing a lot more phone calls, and getting a lot of no's and like rude, and like it was really hard for me at first, because I was not. I wasn't a salesman, I just knew medicine my whole life, and I was nervous to get on the calls, and so it was a little nerve-wracking, and I didn't really like when people hung up on me or were rude, but it was just a part of it. And so the 2 that said yes to me in Cleveland, it probably took 3 conversations. And with the first one, Joe, we found out that we had some common friends and kind of knew each other in the community. And so we went out to dinner, like Jordan and me, and then him and his wife, and kind of sat down and talked. And So it was a great connection. And so we've had a great connection the last, 2.5 years, together. And then Derek, the other owner, probably 2 or 3, conversations. And we were all, good to go. So those are our, houses that we arbitrage. After seeing the success of it and really wanting to expand, then we got more into apartments. And that was where multiple conversations, so much harder to do apartments than housing. It's a good lesson for me. I mean, we have 20 apartments now spread between Naples, Florida and Jacksonville, Florida. I believe I'm done with apartments. I see more value in houses to do that. And those conversations were just months. Yeah. Lawyers had to look through stuff, and it just was a much longer process of going back and forth. We probably talked to 200 apartment complexes, and it was first, do you do corporate leases? And then maybe 25% said yes. But as soon as you mentioned Airbnb, it was like, no.
Interesting.
Yeah. So it was just a long process to find our Jacksonville apartment complex.
And did you just kind of answered it, but were you targeting larger complexes for apartments or smaller communities? What was your, normally I'd say buy box, but what was your rent box?
Yeah. I mean, it was kind of just whoever was going to have a conversation with me. And so my buy box. So Jacksonville, I mean, by this time it's a 1.5 years into our journey, and we were able to understand how to analyze areas on AirDNA and kind of do, the work to get really good at this craft. And so we found that Jacksonville, Florida was a very good market. And so we kind of targeted all apartment complexes that had a pool, that was kind of modern and newer, that had free parking. And so, we just went from there. And so had a few conversations with people that said yes. And then really we found one complex at that time that was willing to let us do this. And it turned out in a great investment. It's 9 minutes away from Mayo Clinic. In Jacksonville, which is where a ton of people in the Southeast come for their medical care. There is a Air Force base right there. Starting in January, we have 4 pilot families from Germany renting out, one of our units for 6 months because they have to be at the Air Force base. It's been really great and really lucky that we found the complex. And I don't know if you want to go into it, but there's just different issues with the carbon complexes, than houses. It's been
let's talk about that, because a lot of folks may not have exposure to that. So what have you found to be the differences in working with apartment complexes versus doing arbitrage for single family homes?
Sure. So, saying that, so the single family homes are great. I love them, but it's harder to scale than if you're going to take 10 or 15 apartment units in a complex. And so that's kind of the direction that we thought, we'd want to go in. And it was different. So now that we're in and doing great, it's good, but I would rather set up a 5-bedroom house than 5 different apartment complexes. I mean, the organization that you need, all of the Amazon boxes for all the kitchen stuff. I'd rather add a few more bedrooms of a house than multiple kitchens and multiple, more bathrooms, and just the amount of boxes and setup time is crazy. And even so, we try to do as good of a job as we could. And, unit 4 is missing the cutting boards. Unit 3 has an extra. Where did it go? It just, it was a lot. So, and then, we'll just take, 5 apartment. I would say 5 apartment units probably gives us the same profit as 1 5-bedroom house. And, dealing with one group versus 5 different groups. Yeah. It's a lot, it's a lot different. It's more time consuming dealing with 5 different, groups going to the 5 different apartments versus one house. And then it's dealing with the apartment complex themselves. So yes, they've given us permission, but we're nervous every day that our guests are going to, be doing something to piss them off. And, then they're not going to renew our lease. And, if you're in the arbitrage business, you understand, but really the profits are in year 2 and beyond.
Mm.
We're able, and if a lot of apartments, you can get 1 or 2 months free. And so then you start paying yourself back for the setup costs right away, which has been really nice. And so I think our payback costs are probably going to be 6 months, which is pretty good. But, if they don't extend our leases after year 1, what do I do with $200,000 of furniture?
Right.
It's a big, deal. And so I think that I would go back and only sign apartments if I was going to get a 2 or 3 year lease. If the owners are like very into it, not that like, okay, but if you have a party, you're out of there. Like that is so much pressure. We had, and I think there's different property managers that are, doing business different ways. But the one that we have in Jacksonville, they're very professional, but they thought that we had a party and, we're like, you're getting your notice letter. And we looked at our Ring cameras, thankfully, and it was the neighbor that had, a party, not us. But they were ready to, kick us out of that unit. And, we go above and beyond, vetting our clients with, verification. And we use a system called Superhog that does a little background check and puts their IDs in. And we do a noise aware to make sure that we're notified if levels get excessive. We definitely go above and beyond, and we still feel like that's not enough. So it's kind of, right now it's amazing, but it's a little stressful not knowing what the future holds for that location.
Sure. And if you have multiple units tied up in one apartment complex, I'm imagining that if you find that they're going to pull the rug out from under you for one unit, they're going to do it for all, right? But I just want to encourage you because you have been through a situation where you didn't know what the future would hold and you pushed through it. So I have every confidence that you will rise and shine. No doubt about it. I want to ask you another logistical question about investing money and resources into upgrading the properties or furnishing the properties that you don't technically own, right? Yeah. Do you have heartburn around that? I looked at your website and the properties are beautiful. You've got wallpaper and a beautiful decor. Talk to us a little bit about the mindset behind that and also the logistics. Did you have to get any design choices or update choices cleared with your landlords?
Yeah. So, thinking back the houses versus apartments, the first one's in Cleveland, like I if I could go back and change the design a little bit, I would, but they're doing fine. I learned later on how to analyze the top performing units in an area and kind of basing design choices off them. But the first Cleveland ones, I'm like, oh, that'll look nice. That'll add a pop of color. Like, let's, that I just chose it, based off of that, but not really using data and analysis to choose that. And so I just got the clear from the house owners, can I do peel and stick wallpaper? The course taught how to design with just like a painting or picture above a bed. And that's fine, but I wanted to stand out. And so I thought, that for a couple $100 extra, it really just makes a room pop this accent wallpaper, in a bedroom or living room. And so that's, kind of how I design our arbitrage properties. And so, spending the money on properties you don't own. I am all for spending money on things that I can move to another unit if I have to. And so, yes, peel and stick wallpaper I wouldn't be able to take, but I believe increasing our nightly rates and getting more occupancy based on the design choices will have, paid for that multiple times. Yeah. And so things like, I'm trying to think, like anything that like I couldn't take with me. Like, I can't think of a really good example, but like like knocking down walls or changing cabinets.
Right.
Like I'm not going to spend money like that, but things,
Right.
like furniture that I can take with me to put in another unit. That's I have no problem doing. And that's, part of our analysis. At first, I just wanted to be paid back within a year. Now that I'm, 2.5 years into it and I could be a little bit more picky on what units I'm taking, like I'm not doing a deal where I can't be paid back in 6 months or less. And so that helps with like the heartache of like a nervousness, like, oh, I'm spending furniture and doing this stuff on properties I don't own.
Sure. And would you mind me asking, a budget range? Like if you're going to furnish a 1-bedroom apartment, about how much would you typically spend to furnish something like that?
So I believe I spend more than most people in this area. And my prices, I'm including the setup costs and the person putting the peel and stick wallpaper on and mounting TVs and the moving truck, everything. We don't have that many 1-bedrooms, but like our 2 and 3-bedroom apartments that we have 20 of, I'm spending about $15,000 per unit.
Okay. I feel like that is fair. If you think about setting up a 2 to 3-bedroom house,
yeah,
you'd spend that much, right?
Yeah.
So it's still just an investment in the property, or in the future revenue, shall I say? But that's great. That's good perspective. And for a 5-bedroom house ish, about what would you spend?
Yeah. So, the first two sides of so the 2 units of the duplex, like again, like probably, I can't even say because a lot of the main stuff was already there, but the next house that we had to start from scratch. And then when we took over the other side, 20 to 25, I would say. And then I did start hiring a designer to help me. And so her fee was, included in that when we took over that second, side of that one that was for students. So I would say 4 to 5 bedroom in Cleveland, 25 to 30,000, I would say. But obviously depends on market and what, your analysis shows as top ranking properties in that area. I would not be able to compete the way I want to compete spending 25,000 in like Florida markets or, beach markets. I would need, many more amenities to be able to compete with that.
Yeah, that's a really good point, because based on the location of the properties, you have to look at what's reasonable and customary in that market, what people expect, what's driving demand, and make sure that you're staying ahead of the game. That's so good.
Sure.
Jessica, it's so funny that I had fully intended on talking with you about large properties, and not once did I really dive into any of the questions that I had. So I'm going to say we're going to have a follow-up podcast interview.
I love that.
This has been so interesting. I so appreciate you walking us through that kind of journey that you've been on. And before we wrap up, I want to ask you some very important questions in the lightning round. Okay.
Sure.
So first question is this: where is your favorite place to vacation? And in the lightning round, I didn't explain it. I need you to answer with the first thing that comes to mind. Okay.
Okay.
Favorite place to vacation?
Montego Bay, Jamaica. Excellence Resort.
There you go. I mean, I will say the best snorkeling I think I've ever done is in Montego Bay. It's so
beautiful. This resort was on a peninsula. It was great. I mean, no kids, gorgeous water, drinks. I mean, I just like that. I just don't have to do anything. It's just, you're just relaxing the whole time.
I love it. Okay. What's one place you've never been that you want to visit?
The Greek Isles.
I hear that a lot.
Yeah. I've been so busy with my career, and I mean, my husband went semester abroad. He did all this traveling, and just because I had to go to the next step, and I really didn't have that. I really missed a lot of opportunities to travel. So trying, to make up for that now.
There you go. All right. Next question is, what's one thing you know now that you wished you knew when you started out in the world of short-term rentals?
Ooh, I think that really anyone can do it if they choose to be intentional about doing it. I think that there is just so much help out there, whether it's a course or podcasts or YouTube channels that if you follow the guides that have worked for other people and you are willing to put in the time it takes to learn how to analyze the right property and do all the right things, that you could be successful in this, and that people should not be so scared to start something if they want to.
Absolutely. I always say, this is not rocket science, what we're doing in the short-term rental space. And one of the things that I feel incredibly blessed is to have had the education, and now I get to teach other people and bring that education to others. But I think you're absolutely right. Structured education, I believe, when you're starting out a new venture or wanting to grow your venture, is a requirement in my book. But then also continuous education. I don't know about you, Jessica, but I have new things that pop up in my business every day. Right. And so keeping my finger on the pulse of what are best practices, what are new trends I should be looking for, what are new, settings that I should be looking for in my tech. I mean, things are changing so rapidly and all the time. I also think it's so important to utilize my brain and drive continuous education always. Would you agree with that?
100%. I mean, part of what I loved about medicine and science was that there was always new studies coming out. You're always using your brain. It's so interesting. I feel the same way with short-term rentals.
Yeah.
There's always a better way to analyze something, and new technology and new strategies and new optimization techniques. And so you are constantly learning, and even if you are very successful in your business, there's still ways to learn all the time and do better.
Absolutely. All right, next question. What's the best piece of advice you've ever been given?
I think it's just simply that you have to do what makes you happy. And it is, and not to listen to other people. I mean, I had everybody, even in my own family, telling me not to do this. Why would I do this? And you just have to be, true to yourself, and you have to believe in yourself and believe that what the right thing for you is. And so at the end of the day, you have to be able to, tell yourself that you did everything that you could to, live your happiest and most fulfilling life.
Amen, sister. I love that. Last question. What's one thing and or person that you're grateful for today?
I'm grateful for my husband. He is just the most patient guy. When this was happening to me with medicine, this wasn't a life he signed up for. He didn't sign up for this to happen and to us to move away from our family and friends in our hometown. And not once did he blame me. Not once did he make me feel bad about anything. He was just the most optimistic, just sounding board for me. And I will just always, be grateful for him for just going with what life threw us. Because honestly, if it had happened to him and I had to uproot my whole life and plans for him, I would have acted differently than, I know it. Not that I would have blamed him, but just like, I can't believe this happened to you. Not once did he do that to me. And that's so, awesome. Believe me, we have our ups and downs, but just being able to have him in my corner like that, I just feel so lucky and fortunate.
Absolutely. And what's your hubby's name?
Jordan.
Okay, Jordan. You better listen to this episode and record the gratitude statement at the end so you can play that on repeat.
That's right. When he's mad at me next time, I'll make him listen to it.
There you go. Break that recording out. Jessica, if people want to learn more about you or maybe rent one of your properties, come stay with you, what's the best place for them to find you online?
Sure. So, I have a lot of learning as we talked about. I mean, I am not big on social media with this business at all. In the next year, I would like to learn more to be able so people can follow, my journey as we add more and more properties. But if you want to look at, our portfolio, please go to jk2properties.com. We have our cabin that we own in rural Ohio on 52 acres if you want to just get away from it all. And then we own a condo, but everything else is, our arbitrage units. And so, if you want to see what we have and what, some examples are, please, feel free.
Amazing. Jessica, thanks so much for being with us.
Thank you so much for inviting me, Stacey.